States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add item E under general business, which would be the concept review for the multifamily project in the Old Town.
Okay. Motions to adopt the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Bryce, second by Josh, all in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is adopted. We have no presentations, proclamations, or acknowledgements. So public comment. So if anyone cares to speak under public comment about something not on the agenda tonight, now's an opportunity. Once, twice. All right, we'll close public comment. Consent agenda. Anyone have any items on consent they would like to see pulled or put questions on?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Josh, second by Bryce, all in favor?
Aye.
Consent passes. So, no public hearings tonight, so we'll jump into general business.
First item under general business, Mayor and members of council, is a recommended change to traffic control signage at Windrose Curve and Thomas Avenue intersection. City Manager Rick Gregory will do a presentation on that.
Are you okay with it from here, or would you prefer me to hold it first?
It was better, camera angle for your pretty face, Rich.
So as the agenda says, we're here to talk about stop sign controls, specifically at the Windrose and Ptarmigan and Thomas intersection. Present our evaluation and recommendation overview. The reason for reviewing controls is that we get resident requests for control modifications due to non-compliance with existing stop signs at the intersection. So this specific review was started from a complaint about lack of compliance with stop sign. And Brady or anybody else that is involved in that can type up if I've got that incorrect. Council is familiar, but for the audience, I'll review our traffic controls review process. It starts with a request or a complaint. Usually it's presented as a request for a specific measure to address a complaint about a safety concern. We take those in, we review it. If it's related to speeding, it'll usually go to the police department for a review of whether more enforcement is needed and what the actual speeds are and the frequency and distribution of speeds. If it's other things, it'll go to the city engineer's office. We have a policy adopted 2018, updated in 2021, I believe. Policy for the review of requests related to traffic operations. It requires that requested modifications that are not in conformance with policy be denied. It also requires that the problems prompting the complaint and the underlying causes of that problem be examined. Then if there are appropriate control changes, we recommend them to the council for approval at a future meeting prior to implementation. So any traffic control changes are always approved by the council. The staff doesn't go out and make those. We have a community-oriented government approach adopted. Number one on that list requires community involvement. So when an issue that we think may affect residents nearby or further away or the community in general, we identify who might be affected or interested, and then we choose a means we think would be most appropriate to notify that. In this particular case, we used Facebook because we thought it might go beyond the immediate neighborhood, and that was the quickest, most efficient way to identify and get that out there.
That notice will provide a summary of the issue and recommendation to be discussed, and provides the date and time of the meeting so that anybody interested can attend and be heard if they want to speak.
So some background issue information about this. We look at the relative traffic volumes, the functional classes of the roadways, and determinations. What does this road do? Where does it go? Where does it come from? To determine if there's a main road and secondary roads, or if they're both sort of main road. And in this case, Windrose Curve is clearly the main road. The traffic shed for that particular intersection, which is circled in gray, from the Windrose neighborhood is bounded in red, and you can see there's hundreds of homes in that large red area on the right, lower right side of the screen. The side roads, Thomas Avenue and Ptarmigan Court, you can see their travel sheds are also circled with obviously much fewer numbers of homes. That directly relates to the amount of traffic coming from each of those. So on Windrose Curve, we've, I think, estimated between 1,500 and 2,000 cars per day. Based on this, based on traffic counts, we're able to infer those types of numbers. Coming off of Thomas Avenue and Ptarmigan Court, we would estimate less than 100 cars per day.
On Thomas, and probably more like 50 on Ptarmigan Court.
That includes not just the people who live there and their daily trips to work or the grocery store, but the school buses, garbage trucks, UPS drivers, that type of thing. And those are based on national studies that are pretty commonly used.
So, like I said, pretty clearly, Windrose Curve is the main road. The other roads turn onto it or off of it. I would imagine there's very little cross traffic between the two, although there certainly could be some. I didn't see any significant sight distance issues. That's always a concern. Can you see oncoming traffic on the other roads as you approach the intersection? 30-mile-per-hour speed limits apply to each road coming into that intersection. Whether it's signed or not, 30 is the statutory limit and is enforceable. I saw generally flat grades, no curves, vertical curves, or grades that would make it hard to stop or see. And the approaches are at normal angles. They're not skewed, so you have to really crank your neck back or anything. They're pretty much right angles. There is a four-way stop existing at Windrose Curve and Thomas and Target. So each leg approaching that intersection has to stop. I look at the intersections either way. So if you go one block to the west, following Windrose Curve, there's one side street stop on Woodcrest Lane at Windrose Curve. Otherwise, that is a through street at that intersection. And there's no stop or controls for the court. I don't know the name of it. I suppose it's, I don't know the name of the court north of Woodcrest Lane, but I didn't see any controls there. And then if you go a block to the east to Oak Ridge Way, there is a four-way stop there, but a lot of that traffic shares the travel shed with, so that makes some sense to me, that you've got a lot of traffic coming into lesser traffic and having to turn. That's a different type of intersection than Windrose Curve at Thomas and Windrose Curve at Woodcrest Lane. I see the two westerly ones as being fairly similar. Our standard of care, and referenced in our policy for making traffic control decisions, is the Minnesota Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And we follow that as strictly as we can. This is based on a national manual, which has very similar criteria, perhaps more broad because it's nationwide. But this is what pretty much any engineer in any community will look at when they're looking at these types of decisions.
We applied the criteria, so we examined each leg approaching the intersection.
I'm just going to interject here. Both the Minnesota manual and the national manual have language something like, when a complete stop is necessary on an approach to an intersection at all times, a stop sign should be considered. I could not come to that conclusion at this intersection. The guidance goes on to say you should use a stop or yield on the leg when it's intersecting of a less important road to the main road, such that the normal right-of-way rule would not lead to reasonable compliance with the law. So if we can stipulate and agree, at least for now, that Thomas Avenue is approaching a main road, which would be Windrose Curve, without any stop signs, the normal rule is if two cars arrive at the same time, the car on the right gets the right-of-way. But when you have a main road where the traffic is tenfold or more of the side road, you're not going to get compliance, because we naturally take on this is the main road and the side road, so that'll lead to conflicts. And that's the sole purpose of stop signs, is to clarify who has the right-of-way when it's not otherwise clear. You also use a street, and it's kind of the same, a street entering a through street. You might use a stop or a yield sign. Stop signs or yield signs should not be used for speed control. And you should not use a yield or stop sign on the higher volume road unless it's justified by an engineering study. When I looked at this intersection, I didn't see anything that would indicate engineering study of any kind would change the outcome. At intersections where a full stop is not necessary at all times, you consider yield signs. So the general idea of both the national and the state manual is to be as conservative as possible about placing signs. More signs actually increase crashes, statistically. So they recommend a yield sign if a full stop's not always necessary. And guidance only provides that a stop sign would be necessary if the through street traffic exceeds 6,000 vehicles per day. We're at a third of that, so we don't need that. If the views are restricted, they are not. Or if there's a crash history that could be corrected with stop sign. I'm aware of no such crash history. So the correct application on the side roads would be yield signs. And no signs, of course, on Windrose Curve. There are consequences that may not be felt directly, but they are, I think, real, for non-conforming. When you have signs that don't conform with the manual, either the federal or the state manual, you're going to have higher rates of violations of whatever controls are there. People don't feel like a stop sign belongs there. They're less likely to obey it. I'm sure Brady can weigh in on that. We have other locations where we're out tonight. We're only talking about this intersection. That's the basis. So when you have high rates of violations, you get increased requests for enforcement. They're not stopping at the stop sign. We need more enforcement, which isn't very practical. It might work for the 2 hours you can be there, but then beyond that, it goes away. We also get requests for additional patrols. They're not stopping at the stop signs. We need a flasher. We need, other ideas. Like I mentioned in the beginning, requests for additional controls. That won't help. Other consequences, unnecessary delays, noise, and fuel consumption at that intersection. You've got cars stopping for no real reason. I've been there several times to look at it, and there's never anybody else there. You could go through unimpeded just like the next intersection. So there is a delay when even if you don't stop, you're slowing down for some reason, and then you accelerate, which is noisier, and extra fuel consumption. So one car, not a big deal, but when you have 2,000 cars a day doing that, day after day after day after day, it does add up. So it's a real factor. Decreases the effectiveness of warranted controls. Now this is more of a global effect. Imagine, to take the extreme case, we threw up a stop sign at every corner. Nobody would obey any of them. The because they're just, there's no apparent reason for them. So we do want to be conservative with our traffic controls so that the ones we do need and do meet warrants have more meaning. And finally, a concern that I share with other engineers is that unwarranted signs could reduce the wariness of pedestrians.
Oh, we can cross, they have to stop. Maybe not. So we want people crossing the street, whether there's a stop sign there or not, the same way. And you can eye contact with that driver, be sure that that driver from each direction, if they're coming, is going to stop, and then proceed safely.
I think most people do that regardless, but there is the concern that a stop sign provides some sense of entitlement, that you don't have to be as careful because they have to stop.
Push up.
Our recommendation, no leg of this intersection, not the side street, not the through street, meets the conditions for a stop sign, and we recommend it be removed. The Windrose curve legs of the intersection warrant no controls, similar to the legs of the intersection 1 block west. The approach street legs, that would be Thomas Avenue and Ptarmigan Court, they do warrant yield signs, but not stop signs. Because this is a change in condition that visitors to those homes on Thomas or Ptarmigan, or people that might not have been following this, there's a new change. They may not be aware that the people on Windrose Curve aren't stopping. So we're suggesting on an interim basis you'd put cross traffic that does not stop plaques on those and flags to warn, and in addition mail a notice to those residents so that they're aware that the change is coming, because they may not be able to see that there are no stop signs any longer on Windrose Curve. That will quickly adjust, and I think those plaques and flags could come down, but that would be, I think, a prudent approach to notify them. Just briefly, and the council knows this, the roles and the changes in controls. The city staff's role is to analyze and recommend any changes. Decisions are made by the city council. The staff then implements those decisions. And with that, who has the first question?
Question for Rich?
Are we doing questions now for Rich, and then feedback, or if there's any, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, if any, if you have any questions for Rich.
May I add something real quick, just to Rich's, or do it later, or see if they have any questions?
Yeah, if you have something to add, go ahead and add.
Yeah, just that in my 27 years of enforcing traffic and working crashes, this study is 100% correct. Stop signs actually cause more safety issues than when they're not there. As was stated, especially, he didn't talk about weather. When you have icy or snowy roads, you take a vehicle and you have to stop it. That's when you skid, drive too fast, you go through the intersection where you should stop. That's where crashes typically happen at stop signs. If there's no stop signs there, you don't have those crashes. And it does give a false sense of security, but this is when they're placed where they should be. So,
Brady, can you give me a rough estimate of how many crashes there's been at that intersection?
I wouldn't unless I pulled data up. I don't think there's not very many.
The ballpark that you would guess?
I think in my 3 years here, the type of crashes are usually just vehicles going off of the road or not stopping, hitting a curb, but it would be under 5, I bet.
So no other vehicle collision crashes, no pedestrians being hit or anything?
No.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I have nothing further. I can, if you have questions, or if you want to move on to.
What kind of, I've talked to numerous residents about this particular intersection.
What type of effect does removing the stop sign, or is there any data that shows any effect when the intersection is used as a bus stop?
There's nothing in the guidance, whether it's a bus stop or whether there's even the presence of pedestrians. Stop signs are simply to clarify which motorist has the right of way when it's not otherwise clear. Motorists are compelled, whether there's a stop sign or not, to stop for pedestrians crossing the street.
Period. I don't know what the fine is for that, but I'm guessing it's on the order of a stop sign violation fine.
Yeah, failure to get a pedestrian, if you hit them, is worse than if you don't.
Well, of course. But,
Might be the charges, but it would be a traffic type violation.
right.
And
So
is
pedestrians
that-
are protected.
Is that only for crosswalks that are actually marked, or is
Nope.
that any intersection where two
The
streets
crosswalk
intersect?
does not need to be marked. If you're
Okay.
crossing the street at an intersection, cars are compelled by law to stop for you.
So I got to follow up. You screwed up my order of questions because you brought up
Sorry.
bus stop. But so, do or should bus stops factor into the decisions or recommendations of this?
I thought about that quite a bit. I don't see how it can be any more safe than to cross the street to get on your bus when that bus is stopped with its stop arm on. That's a $500 fine.
Yeah. You have to
Compliance.
stop for any bus stop anyways, because lots of bus stops don't have stop signs.
It's a gross misdemeanor now, isn't it?
If the child are out and present, an arrest can be made within 5 hours.
So the law aside, most people, in fact, almost 100% of people, feel that the worst violation you can do in your car is pass a bus with its stop arm. So compliance can be high. You've got this big bus stop there. You're going to have children. People are just naturally more cautious. Plus, when the stop arm's out and you've got a driver watching what's happening, I mean, you can speak to this more than I can in your experience, but I would venture, and the data I saw would indicate compliance when the bus is stopped to let those kids cross is about as high as you're going to get.
That's true.
So if you didn't want to let your child go wait across the street where the bus's door might be, you could have them wait on their side of the street where their house is until that bus is there, stopped with the stop arm on. That's probably your safest condition, period.
So let's see. You said that we try to follow the guidelines, state, federal. Follow as strictly as we can. Are there any examples of when we would not follow?
So
on
if it
purpose?
says something like, unless an engineering study is required, and we see something out there, landscaping or something that's hard to move that's causing a sight distance issue, then you might vary from that after you've gone through that study. I didn't see anything like that. We have intersections, I can think of one where the reason for the stop sign is because it wouldn't be practical, and again, it's that engineering study, to require cars to stop on a grade when it's icy.
So those types of things, so that there's some flexibility in it when you have unusual conditions. But again, I didn't see that in this intersection.
And maybe this one's a little bit for Andrea. Now that it's been identified or a recommendation's been made, is there any liability or anything from a city perspective that we have to take into consideration now that it's, whether this is an engineering study or a recommendation that we have to consider if we don't follow the recommendation, if something bad happens tomorrow now and if hypothetically we don't remove or make any changes?
No, the fact that you're making a policy decision is protection from liability because you considered it and you've made a policy decision.
And you may not know this, Rich, this might be a Corey question, but do we know why the stop sign that's westbound on Windrose is lower than all the other 4 stop signs?
I don't know that.
Just something that's been brought up, so I thought I would ask.
Might have been to bring it down into the driver's sight line better.
Kenny
So-
Melgard put it up that road years ago.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, those signs were installed predating any current city staff that would have been involved with the installation. So-
Got it. All right. Answers that.
Any other questions for Rich?
So according to the recommendation, it's less safe now as it currently exists compared to what the recommendation would be by removing the stop signs and adding the yields?
I don't know if I'd put it that way, other than the concern about, but there are certainly arguments that it's been there a long time and it's been fine. I don't see, I would say it differently, I don't see that the stop signs help
In terms of pedestrian safety, they certainly don't help in terms of delays or compliance. If they stay up, this problem will carry on. I don't see any way to make that better. Even throwing more controls at it, it's just going to be an escalating arms race type thing. So,
All right, any other questions for Rich?
No more questions, no?
Just approximately, how many people are here for this issue? All right, there's not very many. Did you care to share any thoughts or comments? And if you do, please just approach the podium and be respectful of your comments. I think we need your name and address
Yeah.
for the record, too.
Aaron Cruz, 10251 Windrose Curve. I believe I emailed all the council members and the mayor. We live 2 houses to the east of the proposed intersection change and have children, and a lot of the neighbors have small children and out on bikes. And the proposal I did read, that one of the council members was gracious enough to forward to my wife, stated in there that traffic speeds are likely to increase with this change. And we're just worried about the safety of the children in the neighborhood, especially ours and the neighbors.
thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt if you had more.
No, that was
I was just going to respond to that. So what it says in the memo is that average speeds through that area would increase because you do have a fair number of people that are at least slowing down for the stop sign. We do not expect speed violations to increase, which is what our main concern would be.
Anyone else?
It's all been emailed to you.
All right, council.
I was just gonna ask, do you think it's appropriate, I mean, I've received 3, and Aaron's was one of them, but I received 2 additional ones, and I don't know if council were those forwarded on, the emails that I received?
I did print them out for this evening's meeting, and they were placed out for council for their review and consumption.
I guess my question would be, do we want to, I'm happy to read these emails that I received from them, if you guys feel like you didn't have sufficient time to review them. Okay. We're good? Okay.
Well, I'll talk first. I mean, I've gotten well over 20 calls, emails, texts, Facebook messages, whatever, about this. And I've had 2 people that are actually supportive of what's being proposed. Everyone else has been against it for a variety of different reasons. Yeah, I live in that neighborhood. I drive through there several times a day. And I can definitely see the logic that Rich has offered up. And Rich, I appreciate you taking the time and putting this together and looking into it. And it's not always a popular decision. And but but I appreciate you doing that. For me personally, I'm not aware of any accidents, and as Brady had, I won't say confirmed because I know you wanted to look at numbers, but there's not a safety issue at the moment. The only potential safety issue would be if someone was just making an assumption that people are going to stop at stop signs and someone didn't and plowed through. To my knowledge, it's never happened at that intersection. I don't know that we need to be doing more to, I agree with Rich. I don't think there's anything more we can do to increase compliance with those stop signs. At the same time, I don't feel that we're solving a problem necessarily. I don't know that there's a problem, a terrible problem that we need to solve by removing the stop signs. I think it's the community and the neighborhood is really adjusted to them. They expect them to be there. And quite frankly, the community that at least has reached out and been vocal doesn't want to see them go. So I don't know that I don't personally feel there's a need to remove the stop signs. I would just assume leave them in place. So that's my 2 cents.
So I originally took the initial complaint on this. So this was brought to me by a resident, and I mean, it really stemmed from non-compliance, obviously, and talking with the police chief, stating that, you know, they understood that the police department can't always be there and that they're seen in the area, and it's a matter of somebody's running that stop sign at the time the police are there, like all the things, right? And the initial ask was they felt that the signs weren't visible, and had suggested like the solar lights that you see on some stop signs throughout different communities, where you might have a stop sign that's obstructed in some way to make sure that people are aware that it's there. Now, I sat at the intersection myself for 20 minutes, and I probably saw 3 or 4 cars roll right through it. They slowed down for it, but certainly didn't make a stop at it. I don't think, and I expressed this to the resident who brought it to me, I said, I don't think visibility is an issue. As it was given in the report, can be seen in all directions. When you're approaching it, it's there. So again, it comes down to the compliance aspect of it. You know, with our policy and what we have, and I'm glad we do, is that we take into account all this feedback that we get from the public. I think that's super important. I'm glad we do that, especially with decisions like this. So I also am, you know, it's there. It's not causing a problem that it's there. But I think the residents in that neighborhood also have to understand that the continued complaints about the same stop sign are not going to change the outcome. I mean, it really boils down to holding each other accountable as neighbors too sometimes. I mean, I've had conversations with neighbors and vice versa where, you know, we're talking about different things that we're seeing in the neighborhood and holding each other accountable and having those discussions. But I think I want to make clear that the residents in that neighborhood, we can't, I mean, there's only so much you can do. So much that the police department can do too. And that's what frustrates me a little bit about not taking them out, because I agree with the decision, or the recommendation, I should say, of taking them out, but I'm also sensitive to those who live on that street in that neighborhood, that that's not ultimately what you want. And as our community philosophy is, we really take into the consideration of what our community wants when it comes to making decisions. So I'm against doing it for that reason only, against removing them from that reason only, but I do think that the complaints aren't going to stop and the problem's not going to go away. And this was the one way to, in my opinion, and obviously the recommendation, for that problem to go away. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Josh,
I don't disagree with anything either of you said so far. I think my question, and it relates back to even similar when we were talking about Woodcrest and the other emergency in and out spot up there, is if there's any liability on the city for ignoring a potential recommendation issue or things like that. We're covered that way, then we're covered that way. I don't think we'll have any roads or intersections like this moving forward, because we'll be more on top of it and not just throwing stop signs there, or like a Xerxes in a hill and a stop sign like that either. So
It's definitely not the only intersection in town where we've said, why is there a stop sign here?
I mean, but I 100% agree. I mean, if we were to just take out everything and just look at it logically, or that's not even fair either. But if it was a new road, I mean, there'd be no way we'd put stop signs in there, and I think everybody would be okay with it. We'd adjust our behavior. We would accommodate now, but there's a lot to be said with the weight of the behavior that exists. The kids know, the families know, I mean, and so that has to be a weight or a factor in it, so.
I definitely can't speak for the police department on this, but I mean, I think it also gets down to a point where our police department has been excellent at education when it comes to when traffic stops occur, that we're having a conversation around, you need to come to a complete stop, here's why. You gotta stop speeding, here's why, that type of thing. And the traffic stop ends with a warning. I mean, we get a annual report every single year from our police department that says how many vehicles were stopped, what percentage were warnings, what percentage were traffic tickets. And at the end of the day, it's overwhelming that our police department continues to give out warnings. And so what I'd also say is, and obviously, there's no requirement and it's against statute to require police officers to issue citations in these types of violations or traffic violations, but that might be taken into consideration with all this too, that there's been a number of complaints that the tolerance is a little bit lower than, okay, it might not be a warning this time, citations are gonna start being issued, so, and that's people that live in that neighborhood. I mean, I think we all know that the majority of the traffic that goes through there, you live there, or you're a visitor to a household there. It's not County Road 2 where we have people coming from New Prague and things like that, so that's just something I wanted to throw out there too.
Yeah,
So
the judges also hold us accountable too, and if I go to the letter of the law, they'll start getting on us and yelling at us for charging people for rolling the stop sign. You have to have a bad violation before a judge will hold a driver accountable. It's just the way our system works, and I just don't want anybody thinking that we're not trying, but it's not it's not a law enforcement can't stop this problem. You know what I mean? I mean, we could write a ticket to everybody. As soon as we drive away, 5 more violations happen. It's not one of those type of problems where you can just arrest people or cite people.
I also, just one more comment quick. I also think that also goes to the notion, because I've heard this and I've seen it on social media, that, the city makes all this money on citations and so on and so forth. Well, I just stated very clearly that we get an annual report every year and it's overwhelming that it's mostly warnings. And if you actually look at the fine costs, I think, Tom, you can talk about where that money comes from, but my understanding, it's dollars of that $100 and some fine that actually goes towards the city, and the rest, the city never sees anything of that, and it actually costs the city money when a driver contests that ticket, and now we're sending somebody to court and all the prosecution costs involved with that. So it's more beneficial for the city financially to give a warning than it would be to cite somebody.
So are we all in agreement to leave, in this case, leave the signs as is?
Yep.
Yep, all right. Do you need a motion of some sort?
I think it would be appropriate for a motion on this item, and it could be something along the lines of motion to,
I'll make a motion to go against the staff recommendation and leave the signs in place.
Second.
Motion by myself, second by Bryce, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Stop signs will stay in place. Thank you, everybody. And Rich, thanks again. All right, next item of general business, we have a concept review.
yes.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to offer apologies to both the council and the developers that are with us tonight. The developers have been talking with staff and approached the Planning Commission at the May 31st Planning Commission meeting. They did ask staff if we could expedite the review with the city council because they do have a option agreement on this property that has some due diligence. Typically, we schedule Planning Commission items on the second meeting of the month, and I was out of the office last week and I just missed it. So I'll introduce the item to you if you're not comfortable at this point without additional feedback. That is fine, but if you could provide any feedback that you have at this time, that would be great. We have with us tonight developers Ryan Geiger, Dwayne Geiger, and Scott Mose, who I mentioned have been working with city staff for approximately 6 to 8 weeks on this parcel. The parcel is Outlot A, Old Town. It's located just north of our retail strip center and the Firehouse Grill. This development team is interested in constructing multifamily housing project on the property, and as I mentioned, they have an option to purchase the property. The property is guided by our comprehensive plan to commercial, and this was re-guided during our 2040 comprehensive plan. It had been mixed use prior to that in the 2030 plan. It's just over 4 acres in size. It was platted as an outlot when in 2005, 2006, when that area was initially developed. It's currently zoned PUD, which is planned unit development. A townhouse project had been approved in 2006, but never constructed. A comprehensive plan amendment would be required to allow this type of use on the property, to re-guide it from commercial to high-density residential. This is a drawing which shows the area, including the Firehouse Grill, the retail center, and the townhouses that had been approved back in 2005, 2006. This development contained 32 townhouse units. Again, the development was approved, grading was started, but the project was abandoned due to the 2007 to 2009 recession. Commercial development or property that's guided to commercial purpose is to provide opportunities for a wide range of commerce, recreation, and entertainment uses. Typical uses in this particular zoning district that would apply to this property would be basically retail, office, restaurant, entertainment. It could be motor fuel station, car wash, things of that nature. This parcel does border commercial on the south and medium and high density residential on the north. And then on the east, across Dakota is low density residential development. And the property to the west, which is currently not in the city limits, is guided to medium density residential. High-density residential, the purpose is just to provide housing opportunities in multiple family structures, apartments, townhouses, condominiums. The desired density range in high-density residential is 10 to 30 units per net acre. Create and preserve and enhance areas for multifamily use at higher densities for both permanent and transient families. Typical uses, again, multifamily dwellings containing more than 8 units. This is an aerial photograph of the property. Currently, you can see the areas that had been graded out for streets under the previous development plan. There's 2 existing curb cuts into the property. There is utilities stubbed into the property. This property is very level. Looks like there's a little hill, maybe some stockpile there at one time. This is a concept plan that has been prepared by this development team. So I want to we'll talk a little bit about the concept plan. The main purpose of the feedback tonight is really just to see if the council would support re-guiding the property to multifamily. Not based on this concept plan, because if it was re-guided, and they canceled their purchase agreement, this would, be available to any multifamily housing developer. This plan, however, proposes two kind of mirrored buildings containing 59 units each for a total of 118 units. Staff has done a pretty thorough review based on the R4 zoning district requirements, and provided a report to the developer and planning commission. Basically meets all requirements that are set out in our ordinance, with the exception of height requirement. They would propose we have a 35-foot height requirement in our high-density zoning district. You can deviate from that if you increase your setbacks, so they are providing for increased setbacks here. Have indicated likely a 45 to 50-foot building height, but we don't have details. They have not prepared architectural drawings at this point. This is the same plan overlaid on the aerial photo. You can see the existing townhouse units to the north, some of the single family to the east, and the commercial to the south. The developers have provided examples of buildings that they have recently been involved with to give an idea of what the exterior may look like, but have not wanted to invest in actual architectural drawings until they receive some preliminary feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council. These are photographs of projects. You'll note on this particular picture there's individual garage doors, which would not be the plan for this particular project under this developer. There would be underground parking on the main level with the single points of entry and exit. Our code does require that 25% of the exterior of all sides be brick or stone or similar material. This is just a street view looking towards down Old Town Road from Dakota. The city would require additional right-of-way be platted with Dakota Avenue and a sidewalk be installed on the north side of Old Town Road. So there was a number of recommendations or notes, I would say, included in the staff report from the Planning Commission, and I can go through them individually if you are interested. I think I will do that. As I stated, the 15 feet of additional right-of-way at Dakota would be required. We'd require perimeter easements. The building has to be set back from the parking area. Noted the 25% of all building facades shall be composed of brick, stone, rock face block, or glass. Snow storage areas must be identified in future concept plans. The location and design of the parking lot appears to meet city code requirements, except the building needs to be set back slightly further. Future submittals should address garbage collection, detailed landscaping plans. Tree inventory would be required based on city code. Lighting plan for the parking lot would be required. We would also require a traffic impact study. Anytime a projected development is proposed to increase traffic by over certain amounts, we do require a study that shows how it would impact the surrounding transportation system and intersections. Park and trail plan identifies the sidewalk. And there are some open space requirements within the site. That kind of concludes staff's comments regarding the submittal. The Planning Commission did review this proposal at their last Planning Commission meeting. There were 4 commissioners that expressed support for reguiding the property to high-density residential, and 1 commissioner that expressed support for medium density, but not high density. So again, we're just seeking city council feedback at this point to the degree that you're open to it, and if you have any comments regarding the concept plan itself.
There was additional feedback from the planning commission. Her name was Nancy, I did get for her, so the council, I can relate some of those additional comments that were provided by the commission. There was the split, there was support for general guidance to higher density residential, but high density residential versus medium was a split. They also commented that traffic would need to be, they supported the traffic study, it was specifically noted within that area, adding that number of additional units to what is currently zoned through the PUD. Is there going to need to be change to the roadways, intersection controls, those types of things. With regards to this, the concept plan specifically, there were a few items of note. They were generally supportive, but one was the height of the building, which is over 50 feet. So it's a full story of parking with another full 3 stories on top of that. And they had concern with just the overall height and how it matches with the surrounding properties, especially to the properties to the east and the west, which are single-family homes. I think they recognize that transition to the north into the townhomes and the higher density and the high density residential property to the north, and then south of the commercial wasn't much of an issue, but they were worried about the transitions east and west. They suggested one approach to that might be to push down the parking, so it might not be entirely underground, but partially underground, as we've seen on other projects that recently that have been presenting concept plans to the council. And then they also were supportive of all of the staff recommendations / notes that were presented.
Question for the development team. You mentioned there's some urgency based on a purchase agreement that's expiring, or an option that's expiring. When is that expiring?
First one is mid-August with a 90-day option.
Yeah.
So I could still early November.
Yeah.
Mid-November.
All right, thank you. I'll just speak real briefly and then I'll open it up. I hadn't seen anything in a staff report or anything on this, and I'm not entirely comfortable just giving a formal opinion or official opinion on with this being the first introduction to the project itself. I mean, generally I'm supportive of any kind of development plan, but being that's involving rezoning, it's something I would want to take a minute to think through a little bit more before weighing in. Now, that's just my opinion and all.
Well, my thoughts are that this was previously high-density residential, right? No?
Medium density.
So it was medium-density residential. So residential was planned there at one point in time.
Correct. So
Correct?
It's guided for commercial for the underlying zoning, but the PUD that's in place had overridden that area to medium density.
In my understanding that there's been some challenges on a commercial side of things on what could potentially be located there. Is that accurate? From a lot size standpoint to,
If there was a market for it, I think it's just more of a market issue at this point in time, based on, more than anything, based on the size of our community and the ability to support commercial development in that location.
We haven't had much for commercial. We've never seen a concept plan.
It's
for
not too
commercial.
small to support commercial development.
But I think because the PUD has it guided for residential, it doesn't immediately come up as a commercial
And
property.
the 2030 comprehensive plan also had it guided to mixed-use residential.
okay. I guess my initial thoughts are that, I mean, we're simply just looking at whether or not we would support a potential zoning change. And, right, and personally, I would be supportive of a zoning change. You know, obviously, there's a lot of factors involved in that, and a lot of the points that have already been made by staff and some concerns that have already been brought up by the planning commission, I think are all legitimate recommendations and concerns. And To me, that doesn't have anything to do with what we're looking at right now, and that's if we would consider it a zoning change. So if I'm giving my opinion right now, it's that I would be supportive.
Josh?
And what do we have to do tonight? Like, what is the point of now? Do we have to approve and?
No, this is
Feedback.
extremely informal feedback. There's still a process that has to be gone through to amend, to
So
a
there'll
formal
still be public
application.
comment and all that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Mhm.
Public, the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning both require, public hearings and notification of the adjacent property owners and many others actually.
Yeah. No, I mean, because everybody knows me. I mean, I love the idea of bringing more diversity to the housing options we have in this town, which is basically nothing. So, I mean, that in and of itself is super appealing. I hate I don't like, I feel uncomfortable with the process the way it is, and like, that's where I got nervous or am nervous about pushing too fast and furiously, but I mean, because I would want the residents' feedback over in that area. Now, you know, as I think through what does that land look like? Could I see high density there? Probably. Could I see commercial there? Probably a little bit less. You know, I don't know what the right thing is, but I don't know. I think I can't give a strong yes or even arguably a strong no, because it just feels like I was reading through, and I'll be honest, I don't always read the reports thoroughly. So had I known to read the reports thoroughly, I would have read, you know, the community development one at least, and I tried to catch up here quick. But that's just where I feel.
Can I play devil's advocate since I'm sitting in the middle of you two?
Sure.
To me, this is just simply, would you consider it? And so I think it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Either you wouldn't consider it or you would, and there's a big process that's involved with actually approving it. So,
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
And
You know?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
well, I was just saying, you know, for the sake of the time that they're putting into it and, you know, pursuing it and seeing if it's an option, I think collectively as a group, we could say, would we absolutely not consider it, or would we consider it? And there's a process involved with approving it anyway, you know?
So my hesitation is, and you're not wrong, Brett, so I mean,
Yeah.
my hesitation is whatever indication we give, if the message we give to the development team in front of us is that, yeah, we're supportive of this, money starts getting spent, on all angles, from the development team to our city staff spending a lot of time on it. And I want to be real sensitive to giving the impression that, yeah, this is something that we support, we just haven't had an opportunity to fully digest it. Now, that said, at a really, really high level, I'm certainly not opposed to having a conversation and looking at it, which I think is kind of what you're, maybe to some extent, kind of what you're saying.
Right.
But I don't want to, by any means, give any false confidence, I guess.
And I think my opinion to sway towards that is the fact that we had another development right next door, I mean, literally right next door, where we have spent a significant amount of time looking at, where the council, as a council, we were supportive of that particular building. Now I know we're not talking about a zoning change, but we're talking a very small shift in a different direction on an adjacent property. So I guess that's where my gut says it's like, well, if we've gotten lots of feedback and we've looked at this option right here and we're moving it, you know, a few 100 feet over here, a different concept, a different building, and different orientation, whatever, that why wouldn't we at least consider that?
It's because it's not the exact same project. You know, I don't know, I mean, I hate putting you guys in this position of being as wishy-washy as I am, but I'm not as familiar with this project. I don't know.
So to be clear, it's not a yes or no answer.
I understand.
Right.
It's informal. You guys can provide or not provide information, so it's not a hell no is an answer. you'd be open to it as an answer. It's the best thing since sliced bread as an answer. Through this process, it's not a formal application. This is just providing an opportunity, and the mayor's right. You give feedback, they will make a business decision if they decide to move forward to spend money. But this is also an opportunity for them to get feedback, to make a decision about whether or not they want to spend money before they have to drop all of the resources that's required to make a formal application. I think there is a valid point with regards to the amount of review time that you may have had to consider it as well. It has to be taken into account. But don't feel like, I just want to stress, don't feel like you're compelled that it's a no or yes. It can be something anywhere in between or nothing at all if you're not comfortable giving feedback. And then it's up to the applicant to decide what that means for purposes of their decision to move forward.
I think we want development, sorry, just real quick. Yeah, I think we would all be in agreement that we want to see development. We want to see multifamily housing come to Elko New Market. And I would be surprised that if anyone on our city council said, get out of here, we're not interested at all. I'd like to have a lot more confidence in my communication to you on that, but that's my opinion. I know where you're at, Bryce.
Sure, I'm Dwayne Geiger, and so we've done some development stuff in the past, and we're just following the recommendation. I've been working for a while, and it's an informal process to visit with you guys because it is expensive to
Go down to the next level. Scott has built our townhomes before, and so we're very familiar with this construction and all that stuff. We look at that piece of property and we think it's ideal for an apartment building. How big, da-da-da. That's kind of all yet to be determined. We have some concept reviews that he's showing you guys, and Scott builds nice stuff. We own nice properties. And, but, we're not here to guide your comp plan. And we're here to say, this is what we think. It's a benefit, we think it's a benefit to the community, we think it's a benefit to us, otherwise we're not going to do it. But, we build stuff and people move in. People need a place to live. And right now I look around here, I see what's affordable. I don't see a whole lot, So we manage our properties well. I feel like it would be a good project, but I understand your process, and we're not trying to expedite anything. But we're not going to also, we're not big gamblers. We're too old to gamble. So whatever your process is, the sooner the better, because
everything is getting more expensive, including interest.
I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know. I just want you to know we're not pushing this. But if we're going to start a project this year, we need to know soon. And the soon needing to know is, there's a process to it. So we understand that. But
I would say if you would be willing to give us a couple of weeks, we can give you a lot stronger feedback at that point.
very fair.
Okay.
More than happy to do that. And we'll yield to whatever city staff and whatever you folks say. We don't have to do the project. I mean, I think we really like it, and we think there's a good market for it. But we're not going to get out in front of our skis too far until we know where everybody's at. So.
Fair enough. Josh?
Well, yeah, no, and I just want to clarify too. I am all about multifamily and bringing more diversity here. You can look at my record, and I don't need to say it tonight. I think people know where I probably stand. So it was more about the process itself, not your guys' proposal, anything like that. I mean, I can't obviously say that I'm going to approve anything without seeing anything, but you probably know where I stand. So, I mean, I think that's as confident as I can. The confidence I can give you is that, and knowing that there's still part of the process to go through and everything else like that. I think.
Yeah, it's definitely not a hell no. It's just, we just need to digest it a little bit.
So, at If we do come back to the city council with this as a business agenda item at the next meeting,
The only additional information I'll be providing you is just the staff report that was provided to the planning commission.
Which would be great. Updated with the detailed summary of their feedback.
of their feedback at the meeting, which is contained in the planning commission minutes.
Is there any, so what this report says is it's currently guided to commercial. There's a request where developers looking for feedback to re-guide it to high-density residential. It identifies the surrounding land uses. And, really the council feedback, it needs to be on the comp plan amendment.
Not specifically a project. I mean, more, I think that's the way I see it. The feedback regarding their project is a bonus, but it's a higher level.
And that's something to keep in mind is, when you re-guide it, if you're not re-guiding it specifically for their project, they could potentially get into the project and say, this doesn't work for us.
And then somebody else comes in.
And somebody else comes in. So,
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joe still wants some more time to digest it.
Well, I didn't change my opinion, but.
Right.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thanks, yeah.
Thanks, Brad.
Appreciate your patience.
You know, you can stay. You can stay.
No, we'd love to, but I think we'll leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, reports.
the League of Minnesota Cities and Metro Cities Legislative Council meetings is more informational than anything, but the council will typically talk about interests that they have, so you don't have two people signing up to the same committee, et cetera. So I just put it on there to provide an opportunity for the council to chat about the issue and express interest related to it, coordinate efforts.
I honestly have not even had time to look at that.
I'm with you.
I signed up for 3.
Why am I not surprised?
So I'm on the LE, local economies for Metro City, improving local economies, the transportation and general government one, and then something with the League of Minnesota Cities that is a combination of the general government and the local economies one. I just can't remember the 2 letters, where they always do the policy numbers. So I signed up for 3.
Right on.
I achiever.
I always get excited when those
Classic
things go up.
Josh. All right, anything else under administration?
No, unless there's any questions for me on anything.
Please.
3 of our 4 interviewees went on to the next scheduled meeting, which is next Wednesday, the 15th. Joe, you're going to be part 1:30, 2:30, 3:30 afternoon meetings. Good prospects. We're really happy 75% of the people made it to the second round. So hope we can get one of them identified. All of them have background packets, should bring them in. So that will really speed up the process. Still looking at beginning of August before we can get somebody on board, and then maybe November, December before they'd be on their own, so we can get back up to full strength. Other than that, any questions? Otherwise, in the interest of time, I'll yield to Rich.
Do we have access to a speed trailer?
We own one.
We do own one? Is it?
It's not very good, but Public Works doesn't,
It was economical at the time.
Okay.
yeah, but.
It was a Cory purchase.
We used it last Tuesday. I don't know if you were here in the roundabout, we last used it with Place on Glenboro and Aaron when we had the detour.
Yeah.
But it is, I can't remember how long the charge lasts. It might be a full day, but I think it has to be pulled every day to be charged.
Yeah. And the, it's not a recording trailer, so you can't pull any data off.
Oh.
It's just a straight,
What does something like that cost, roundabout figure, do you know? Just out of
We
curiosity.
have, if you're looking for data, Renee and Rich have, or Renee can do a speed study on a post. It's a anonymous looking item that gets counts and speeds and everything and directions.
We have our own counter, so we'll
No,
track both
I knew
directions.
that.
You're looking for traffic.
I'm looking for visibility, like, hi, there's a speed trailer here.
So we have monies in our budget. We just looked at that. I wanna say we put money every year. We could probably get a new trailer. That would be something that we could do.
I mean, if you guys felt it was beneficial, something that I thought about when people talk about speed complaints, it's a very visible object if it was something that could
I would love it.
take the data down and we have the data from that trailer.
The data, we can get the data another way, but I think a better way, cause there's no one watching them when you get the data, you get the true speeds, what people are
Sure.
going. I like the data, it's more scientific, but I have no problem with the speed trailer, it's just resources to put it in and out. We can't do it as a police department, we don't have hitches and stuff like that, we don't have community service officers. But I can definitely investigate, cause just about every week they send me advertisements for those trailers. Overall, they're typically used by bigger departments though, just
Sure.
because they require resources to put out and everything, but we could,
So with the pickup truck, they can haul it out and haul it in at the end of the shift.
but we could definitely, at one of the next meetings, I could bring you a proposal for how much they cost and how much we have in our budget and,
Be interested in looking at it.
I'd be on board.
okay?
They're a good tool, it's just typically they take a lot of resources to put out, but, okay, for sure.
Right on.
Any other questions? All right,
I skipped over Public Works, but I know there's the report in there. Was there anything additional to it?
Just that we're currently posting for the position, it hasn't closed yet. We're seeing kind of similar amount of applications trickle in at about the same time frames as we saw with the police department.
Regarding fire department, just so you guys know, I had asked Tom earlier today if going forward, we can just maybe include any updates that the fire department might have under administration, just because I can't think of ever hearing an actual report from, I mean, Todd hasn't ever been to a meeting.
I remember way back when.
No way.
He used to come sometimes, no?
No, unless he had actually an item on the agenda.
Yeah.
If you
Unless
needed
wanted
money,
or
then he'd
something.
come.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, does anyone object to that?
No.
That's, okay. I figure it's just an efficiency deal. Engineering. Renee's out there, so is there anything more in community development that?
Now council's aware of everything else that's going on.
Parks, there's good information in the packet on parks. Anything additional to add?
Actually, I had thought that Jessica was gonna be here tonight to actually give a presentation on it. I have a presentation and can provide the presentation on the farmer's market. We're really just providing information. We are looking for direction from the council on where you wanna go with the farmer's market. We did get feedback from the Parks Commission last night on that particular item. Is this an item that you want me to go through tonight, or is this something that you wanna mull on the information and place on for discussion at a future item?
It'd be nice to have the other two here too
Yeah,
for that one.
I'd go for the latter on that.
Yep, then I will continue this item to the next meeting.
CCEC, I'll add one quick thing on CCEC. I had a planning commissioner send me a message. This relates to the Fire Rescue Days parade. I had a planning commissioner send me a text earlier today asking why it's just city council members that walk in the parade, and I thought that was a brilliant point. We should invite commissioners if we want to be part of that.
Sounds good.
And if the float's too big, I'm happy to walk, you know, I'm sure others would be too, so.
They can buy their own damn candy though.
I don't know, is it too late or is it too cumbersome to extend an invite to commissioners? Does anyone object to that?
I don't know.
You
Okay.
guys have to share candy though.
I know, that's what I'm saying, there's not enough buckets already.
Just to be clear though, can I ride with you guys on the wagon or a separate float? Because we do have issues sometimes finding vehicles to keep.
I have no problem getting out and walking along the.
My wife and kids don't wanna ride on it anyway, so
Yeah.
I make them.
So some of us can walk, some of us can ride,
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Scales tomorrow. I know I had the agenda pulled up. There was a legislative update and, oh, yeah, housing is gonna be a primary focus of the meeting, so. There is a Zoom link to it. It's on the county website if those are available and can't make it in person.
Did I read the email though? Was it like, it wasn't general housing, it was it like stupid?
I can read it to you. I mean,
No, I'll go back and look.
I have it in front of me.
Dude.
Yeah, it's a student homeless planning grant report, Maxfield Comprehensive Housing Study, Live, Learn, Earn Housing Group Update, and video.
We'll be coming back and actually giving a presentation or providing a summary of the Maxfield study as it specifically pertains to us. On that one, there are some interesting things within the study, and there's some deficiencies within the current version of the study that we'll just present to.
See, I don't read things very detailed, you know, so I saw this,
You're a big picture guy.
and the student, I just tuned out and moved on.
You sent out the I-35 info, right?
Yeah, I would just say a couple of things with that. City's gonna save a couple $100 on dues because dues are going down to like $17.35, I think is what it is.
It's all your influence.
From the 2000 that they were.
Because they don't get anything done for us?
Yeah.
Well, it's about getting rid of the contingency that they had in the budget in the past.
Love getting rid of contingency.
What comes in gets spent is the idea, and not having anything extra in the budget. So there's that. And then one thing that I found interesting on the legislative update that we got was that we are in jeopardy of potentially losing millions in federal dollars because we don't have a transportation bill finalized with the state. So our allocated money to the state could potentially be lost if they don't get their act together and put something together. It's a lot of money.
I say we all run, man. We need to replace them all.
Then we lose you here.
Any discussion by council or motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.